One of the 13 tombs that you find here, and this has quite a few mummies in there.
So these are Nasca bones?
Yes, from the late Nazca period. And the cemetery, in fact, was used for a much longer period of time. It really was used up to the Wadi period, which is the culture that came after the Nazcas.
So between the 7th and 9th centuries?
Yes.
So this is pre-Inca?
Pre-Inca, yes.
Late Nasca?
Correct, yes.
To protect them, some of the skeletons have been gathered together in pits by archaeologists. Ancient Peruvians usually buried their dead in a sitting position. For years after they died, they would receive the offerings of the living. As centuries passed, they might be forgotten. But the desert is so dry, the mummies survived in almost their original state.
They seem to be not, most of them are not artificial mummification, but they are rather a natural process. They only got the guts out of them. And then because of the dry conditions and the heat, they mummified naturally.
Beyond the burial pits is one of the strangest sights I've ever seen. The desert is littered with fragments of human skeletons.
So these bones, these are human bones, and they're
Yes.
just lying here.
Part of a skull, and then
Wow, that's a bit spooky, huh?
Yep.
This whole place is just...
There are quite a few large bones around and skulls you see all around there. The whole area, you see all around, there's pieces of skulls, large bones. There are even some remains of cotton. And that here, just there.
Here.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Some of the skulls.
These are, okay, I'm going to just leave that there then. So this is cloth that the mummies that we just saw are interred in. There's a person underneath it.
Yeah.
There's probably people all over this place.
Yes, it's a very large cemetery.
And it's just through the erosion of time that we're seeing the bones on the surface.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. That's freaky.
I wanted to come close to the Nasca, but I never imagined I would get this close.
This is a very surreal and, you know, just a visceral reminder of these people. This isn't just about lines and the artwork. These were people who lived here, and these are their bones to prove it. And for me, this really hits home.
The Nasca burial ground is amazing. It also really impresses on me just how arid this desert is. That's why it struck me as strange that the lines included so many ocean animals. A whale, a fish, a frigate bird. I wonder if the sea might hold some clues to the mystery of the lines. When I get to the ocean, I discover one of the most dramatic coastlines I've ever seen. The seas of this remote coast are some of the richest in the world. I've heard that local fishermen still use techniques similar to those of the ancient Nasca.
Deborah? I found you!
Deborah is waiting for me at the beach.
This is great. What are these guys doing?
This traditional way of fishing, which, as I was telling you, I mean, they do it in a very, very similar way to what people did in ancient times. They have these floaters there.
The inner tube.
Exactly, they're made with an inner tube. Before, in ancient times, people used inflated sea lion skins.
Really?
Yes, so it's very similar to those you see the inner tubes, but they were the skins at the time. But basically they used nets, they were the same amount of people, used the same areas.
So the materials have changed, but the technique hasn't.
Exactly.
But one reason why I'm here and why I was interested to see the seafaring activity is because I flew over the geoglyphs.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of marine life pictures.
Yes, definitely.
Like whales.
Yep.
And I don't get it. Why would the people who dwell in the desert have these images of sea life?
Well, obviously because they were living in both places.
No,
they were complementing agricultural activities with fishing activities. No.
So they split their time between the land and the sea.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Imagine this scene with an inflated sea lion skin, plant fiber nets, gourd floaters, and rock weights. And there would have been not one crew of fishermen on this beach, but many. Now's my chance to find out about Nazca fishing techniques. Firsthand.
Hey, wait, you know what? Here, wait, hold this.
What are you doing?
I'm gonna go join them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just one of my stuff. I'll see you at the other end.
The water is cold, and the surf is really strong. To do this on a daily basis, those Nazca fishermen must have been tough and determined. We push the tube with the net piled on top of it around in an arc. When we've completed the arc and brought the far end of the net ashore, we haul in both ends of the net.
Well, at first, the water was ice cold. But then after you're swimming so hard against the current, it's exhausting. So I don't feel the cold anymore. I think they were kind of confused because they didn't really know why I was running into the water with them. And I don't know, there's supposed to be a game plan, like who goes where. I think they just forgot everything. I went, oh my God, this guy's in the water with us. And why is he wearing his clothes? So now we just gotta pull it in and see if we caught anything.
As we pull in the net, I wonder if it was from experiences like this that the Nazca drew their figures on the desert. This coastline is still populated by the sea creatures of the lines. Could it be they simply drew the animals they saw around them? But in that case, why a monkey? The nearest monkeys are on the other side of the Andes Mountains, in the Amazon jungle. There are no easy answers here, but there is another theory involving water. Not the sea, but water to irrigate their fields. In this desert, it's got to be the most precious commodity. Who made the famous Nazca Lines of Peru, and why? The deeper I dig, the more puzzling the mystery becomes. I've already investigated the first theory of the lines, that they were an astronomical chart. It turns out to be a partial explanation at best. Only 30% of the lines have been shown to mark solstice points or have any astronomical correlation. So I've been following a hunch that the lines might have a much more practical explanation. Something to do with water. The Nazca lived in one of the driest places in the world. Their greatest concern must have been water. When I ask Nazca specialist Ana Maria Cogorno about this, she tells me that there's a theory which relates the lines directly to water. It turns out that beneath the desert are a number of aquifers, or underground water flows. The water theory says that the lines point not to the stars, but to these subterranean water sources. Ana Maria says she's got something to show me. Aqueducts. She tells me the Nazca built aqueducts which tapped into those aquifers. This is something I've got to explore.
So they made these. These are 2,000 years old.
It's unbelievable. They still use them.
What are these guys doing now?
Now they're cleaning. They're taking all the seaweeds out of it so that the water can flow.
Where does this water come from?
Comes from the water table.
So this is groundwater.
Yeah, groundwater.
And without this water, they couldn't live here.
Absolutely. The first thing was to observe the water and control the water system.
I want to see exactly how the Nazca tapped this aqueduct system into the aquifer.
So, I think I'm now going to flush myself down the Nazca line.
See where it goes. Inside, it's cramped, smelly, and wet. which is what you'd expect of a 2,000-year-old aqueduct. What you wouldn't expect is how beautifully preserved it is.
This is incredible. Can you imagine that this was made 2,000 years ago? Look at this. It's like this perfect little channel running underneath the desert above. That is incredible.
And then I find out why it's so well preserved. Way inside the aqueduct, I meet a man cutting the mosses and grass, which have grown here since the last cleaning. He's getting the aqueduct ready for the rains, which will fill it in a few weeks' time. It's an incredible thought that these aqueducts have been maintained like this for almost 2 millennia. Every 50 yards or so, there's a spiral entrance to the system, which makes it easy for people to get to the water. From the air, these entrances look amazing, like huge screw holes in the desert. This remarkable water system still irrigates large areas of the desert today. Water is a precious commodity in this parched landscape. The few rivers generate oases of green vegetation, but for much of the year are dry. The aquifers, filled with water from the mountains, never dry up. According to the water theory, the lines marked these underground water sources. Aqueducts were one way the Nazca could tap into them. "40 yards up the aqueduct, and it's starting to get narrower. I wonder what I'm going to find at the end. How does it connect to the aquifer? Does water just seep in, or is it somehow channeled into this tunnel?"
Well, let me see if I can give you a sense of what this feels like. Aside from the cramped position, it's cool, and it smells like mud. Not stagnant mud, maybe because they're cleaning them now, but definitely there's a loamy smell. Something's been here for a while.
I push on, but the going gets harder.
Okay, it's getting narrower.
Before long, I can tell there's no way I'm going to make it all the way up to the aquifer.
It's a lot smaller than I was expecting. This is the tight part. This is the tight part. So close!
As the aqueduct gets smaller and smaller, I have no choice but to go up at the next exit.
Not far, not much farther.
I guess the ancient Nasca were smaller than I am.
And I gotta say, I am amazed. I had no idea that aqueducts existed in South America, and certainly not 2,000 years ago. The technology, just the ability for these people to engineer such an incredible channel of water and protect it. I have tremendous new respect for the Nasca. I'm definitely impressed. And I definitely need a shower.
So could the Nazca Lines be pointing to subterranean sources of water? I discovered that geologists have plotted the lines against the underground geological faults and aquifers of Nasca.
It's true that a lot of the lines point to sources of water, either in the mountains or under the ground. But, like the star theory, there's a problem. Only 30% of the lines correlate to water.
And as we all know, the 30% correlation is close to meaningless. I'm no closer to a convincing theory about the meaning of the lines. It's time to widen my investigation. The problem with Nasca is that all the theories are pure conjecture. We know how they made them, but we don't know why. But there are other great geoglyphs in the Americas about which we know a lot more. I've been exploring the deserts and coasts of southern Peru, searching for clues to the meaning of the mysterious Nazca Lines. The two great theories about these massive desert geoglyphs, that they're an astronomical chart or a map of underground aquifers, have both turned out to be unconvincing. The lines are still a mystery. So I've decided to widen the investigation and explore other geoglyphs which might shed some light on the Nazca Lines. So I'm heading to Southern California, where ancient North Americans living along the Colorado River also made geoglyphs. They've been given the Italian name